It is a totalitarian dictatorship. The president has very little to do with this. They share one thing deeply in common, which is the quest for the destruction of the existing international order and the destruction of neighbors which may stand in their way. These missiles were not made in Iran. They were painted over North Korean Nodong. The cross crack of Iran will bring the dam down. If they run around the region with a nuclear torch in their hand, they could set the whole region on fire.
안녕하세요. KRM 뉴스 명영주입니다. 현재 이스라엘과 가자 하마스 전쟁으로 인해 저희가 여러 안보 전문가들을 만나보고 있는데요. 오늘은 이란 전문가이자 국무총리실 국가안보보좌관을 역임하고 첩보부 대령으로 퇴역하신 에란 레르만 교수님과 함께 이스라엘과 이란 그리고 북한의 관계에 대해서 얘기를 들어보겠습니다. Shalom, Dr. Lerman. Thank you so much for having us here today.
You're very welcome. Your country is very dear to my heart.
You're really an expert on Iran and the threat that actually Israel is facing. What do you see right now is happening?
Well, let's begin with the fact that Israel's basic interest is not enmity with Iran. The choice of enmity comes entirely from the Iranian side, and it is not a result of any Iranian interest in the sense of a national interest or a quarrel that we have. There's nothing. In fact, there's a monument in Israel to Iranian-Israeli friendship. It's called the Eilat-Ashkelon pipeline. It was built to carry Iranian oil from the Indian Ocean and the Arab Gulf through the Red Sea to the Mediterranean coast. And it was at the time when Israel and Iran thought of each other as friends. The present regime in Iran has made it a basic foundation of its purpose. And this is right now was once again reasserted by the Supreme Leader, Ali Khamenei, during the funeral procedures for President Raisi. And he asserted this purpose in a conversation with the leader of Hamas, Ismail Haniyeh, who came to offer his condolences. And this is a deeply dangerous attitude because it is ideologically rooted. It is deeply embedded in the overall identity of the regime as a force in the world that seeks to overthrow the existing order, to overthrow the stability of the region and ultimately of the world. This is why they find themselves in league with Russia, to some extent China, certainly North Korea, which has been of great help to Iran in developing its own military capabilities. And Iran hopes to break the back of the existing order in the region, to become the regional hegemon, to become the dominant empire in the entire region by being in the business of destroying Israel. This is why they've invested billions in arming Hezbollah on behalf of an Iranian revolutionary ideological project. Hezbollah is a fully owned, fully funded, fully controlled Iranian project. You cannot isolate the war in Gaza with all its tragic consequences from the purposes behind Iranian policy.
So is it safe to say that they are actually driven by religious ideologies? They also have voting, and then they were being supposed to be voted in as their government.
No. Let's be very, very clear. First of all, on this question of voting, there is a facade of democratic procedures in Iran. But, first of all, nobody is allowed to participate in the elections, even if there are nuances between more radical elements and more reformist elements. Nobody is allowed to run unless they accept the principles of the revolution, and specifically the idea of Velayat-e Faqih, that is to say obedience to the religious interpreter which is another name or another title for the supreme leader, the Rahbar, who is not elected and will not be elected. If he dies, Khamenei, of his illnesses, he would be replaced by somebody chosen by a very small group of ayatollahs who would determine his successor. This has nothing to do with democratic procedures. And nobody is allowed to participate in Iranian politics, or even to survive for that matter, if you do not accept the basic concept of obedience to the supreme leader. Second point is, most of the really significant functions of the government in Iran are not in the hands of the government. The government, the president and his cabinet deal with domestic issues, with the economy, everything that's going to hell in a handbasket. The Iranian economic situation is terrible. So they are disposable. They can deal with this unpleasant business, while all the functions that matter to us for regional and international stability, the nuclear project, the military, the subversive and intelligence operations, and foreign policy, the whole range of issues that in the Arab world they call sometimes Wizarat al-Siyada, the sovereignty ministries, the real deep grand strategy functions of the state are all in the hands of the supreme leader and the supreme leader alone. The president has very little to do with this. And this means that Iran is very far from being a democracy of any kind. It is a totalitarian dictatorship under one man with some decorative democratic elements in the margins.
So because with all the dangers that's going on in the world, Korea is also one of the places that has a potential threat with the North Korea, and with especially Iran being so close with North Korea.
Let me give you an example. The Shihab-3 missiles, when they were paraded, they said, made in Iran and we will destroy Israel. And these missiles were not made in Iran. They were painted over North Korean Nodong. And the close cooperation between the two industries of death in North Korea and in Iran has been going on for years and years, for decades.
Can I ask, what is the similarity and the difference between the North Korean nuclear program and the Iranian nuclear program?
Well, they have similarities in the ambition and the sense that it is a tool of survival for the regime, but also a tool of threatening the neighbors. Comparing the Iranian nuclear project, which is extremely dangerous, and the North Korean nuclear project, which is dangerous, but has been effectively contained to a certain extent. I would say that there are four categorical differences, if I may. Two on the negative side, consequences, and two on the positive side, tools of action. First of all, the introduction of the North Korean nuclear weapon came against the background of the already existing threat of the PRC capabilities. And so, at least until now, as long as people can still trust the United States, and that's of course a big and open question, neither your country nor Japan nor others have decided that, Australia, others, have not yet decided that the threat requires them to translate their capabilities, and I'm sure you have them, and I'm 100% sure the Japanese have them. People say they are a screw turned away from the capacity to build a bomb. They have the plutonium, they have the know-how. They don't do it for deep and legitimate historical reasons, but also because they are under the existing umbrella that was built against the PRC threat, and so that also holds for the PDRK threat. In the case of Iran, if they get it, we can be 100% sure that many countries in the region will immediately push in the same direction. Already the Saudis are negotiating with America right to have the control of the nuclear power fuel cycle, which would mean that they would have very quickly the capacity also to enrich to a military level. Egypt, maybe Algeria, Turkey for sure. In other words, if the North Korean crack in the dam of the Non-Proliferation Treaty did not break the dam, something is seeping out, but the dam is holding. The cross crack of Iran will bring the dam down, and we may see a world of dozens, maybe many dozens of nuclear countries, a world unstable almost by definition. So that's one very important difference. The second is that North Korea does not have allies, does not have proxies. It is supported by the PRC, but it doesn't have tools of influence beyond its borders. But in the case of Iran, they have followers, proxies, which I spoke about, across the region. If they run around the region with a nuclear torch in their hand, they could set the whole region on fire. So that's an additional danger that does not necessarily exist in your peninsula. The two positive, I would say, aspects are, in the case of Iran, if necessary, we do have a viable military option. Theoretically, this is also the case vis-à-vis North Korea, but I fully understand the deep reluctance of people in South Korea to go through anything like the experience of 50 to 53 ever again. So the war option is more relevant in the case of Iran, if necessary, than it was when the North Korean nuclear project could have been perhaps destroyed by military action, but there were clear, deeply held reasons for this not to happen. The second thing is that the Iranian people are connected to the international world to some extent. You know, they say what is the second largest Iranian community in the world after Tehran. It may be an exaggeration. People say the largest Iranian city after Tehran is Los Angeles. There are hundreds of thousands of Iranians in exile. People know in Tehran, they talk to each other by cell phone, they understand what's going on, they know that there is a different world. They hope for a better life. They know that this regime has ruined the economy. You saw the expressions of joy, literally, after IC's death, because people are so frustrated. And sanctions, serious systemic economic pressure, can help bring the regime down or force it to abandon the nuclear project. I'm more doubtful about North Korea, where, horror of all of us, we know that even one generation ago, not in the early years, there was mass starvation. Terrible, terrible things happening in the countryside. It's a country deeply and catastrophically impoverished. So maybe through sanctions you can deny some toys to the dictator, but sanctions are much less effective in a country so repressive and so poor. In Iran, we have seen the effectiveness of systemic pressure. They came to the table to negotiate. I believe that the combination of a credible military threat and effective economic sanctions can make a difference. In the case of Iran, I wish I could be as sure of that in the case of the PDRK, which in any case have already crossed the threshold and are in the possession of a small nuclear arsenal.
Because we see a lot of similarity between the threat that Israel is facing and Korea facing from North Korea. What would you like to give an advice to Korea?
Well, don't ever fall asleep, as we did on October 7th. I've been an intelligence officer for much of my life. It breaks my heart to think of my colleagues, my younger colleagues, who could have failed in such a terrible manner to see what's coming. So be constantly on the alert, have a very clear and well-organized list of indications of what would indicate not only intentions but preparations for action. And if you, God forbid, see that these indications are there, that they are being fulfilled, prepare and be ready for massive preventive action and made able to withstand a large-scale attack. We've learned very bitter lessons from our lack of preparedness, the lack of a local reserve force, mobile and with strong firepower that could have come immediately into the battle zone. There are a lot of lessons to learn, but for South Korea, I would say being constantly on the alert and maintaining the capacity to strike quickly and effectively against points of penetration. And if you don't have the means to certify that the enemy is not on a war footing, act as if the assumption is that he is.
I think I learned so much about what's happening in Israel and then similarity between South Korea too. Thank you so much for your time.
You're welcome.
תודה רבה.